2,500 years ago, a king controlled an economy so vast, so precisely engineered, that it wouldn't be matched in complexity until the Industrial Revolution. He didn't do it with armies alone. He didn't do it with conquest alone. He did it with something far more powerful. A financial system so sophisticated, so deliberately constructed, that modern economists are still studying its architecture today. His name was Darius the Great. And what he built wasn't just an empire, it was the world's first centrally managed, multi-currency, cross-continental economy, stretching from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, from Egypt to Central Asia. This is not a story about war. This is a story about money, logistics, bureaucracy, and the hidden machinery of power that held the ancient world's greatest empire together. And if you pay close attention, you'll recognize the patterns, because they never actually went away. To understand what Persia built financially, you first have to understand the sheer scale of the challenge. By 500 BC, the Achaemenid Persian Empire covered approximately 5.5 million square kilometers. It governed somewhere between 35 and 50 million people, roughly 44% of the entire world's population at that time. Let that sink in. Nearly half of all human beings alive on Earth fell under Persian economic administration. This wasn't a loose confederation of tribes. This wasn't a primitive tribute system where soldiers raided villages and carried off gold. This was a structured, hierarchical, multi-layered economic machine with centralized accounting, standardized currency, regional governors with fiscal responsibilities, state-run industries, and a labor payment system that predates modern wage theory by 2 millennia. The Persians didn't stumble into this. They built it deliberately, piece by piece, institution by institution. And it started not with gold, but with a radical idea about how to organize human labor. Here's what most financial histories miss. Persia's economy wasn't built on slavery the way Rome's would later be. It was built on something closer to a government payroll. Sound familiar? In 1933, archaeologists excavating Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire, discovered something that would rewrite economic history. They found approximately 30,000 clay tablets, now known as the Persepolis fortification tablets, buried under the ruins of the treasury. These weren't religious texts. They weren't military dispatches. They were receipts, accounting records, worker payment logs, supply chain documentation. They recorded in meticulous detail the wages paid to thousands of workers, men, women, and children, across dozens of occupational categories: stonecutters, carpenters, treasury scribes, wine distributors, animal handlers. Skilled craftsmen from Greece, Egypt, Babylon, India, and Persia itself were all listed, all paid, all tracked. And here is where it gets extraordinary. These workers were paid in two forms: silver and rations. Rations of wine, grain, and livestock were distributed through what functioned as a state provisioning system. Silver was paid for specialized skilled labor. The Persian state essentially operated what we would today recognize as a dual currency payroll system: commodity wages for subsistence and monetary wages for skilled incentivization. This is not primitive, this is advanced. This is a government that understood the difference between maintaining a workforce and motivating one. The tablets also reveal something darker and more familiar. There were bureaucratic inspections. There were audits. There were officials whose sole job was to verify that the right amounts of grain and silver were reaching the right workers. The Persian financial state had created, 2,500 years ago, the concept of the government auditor. The pattern is unmistakable. Every large-scale economy in history eventually builds the same infrastructure: standardization, record-keeping, and oversight. Persia got there first. Before Persia, coinage existed. The Lydians in modern-day Turkey had invented stamped metal coins sometime around 600 BC. The Greeks had adopted the idea, but these were local currencies, useful for city-state trade, limited in geographic reach. Darius the Great did something that had never been done before at scale. He took the concept of coinage and turned it into an instrument of imperial control. Around 515 BC, Darius introduced the gold daric, a standardized gold coin bearing the image of the king himself, running forward with a bow and spear. It was not merely money, it was a political statement minted in metal and circulated across millions of square kilometers. The daric was brilliant in its design. It was heavy, approximately 8.4 grams of nearly pure gold. It was consistent. Every daric was the same weight, the same purity, the same image. Merchants across the empire knew exactly what they were getting. And that consistency was the whole point. Trust in a currency is trust in the institution that issues it. Darius was using money to communicate imperial stability. Alongside the gold daric ran the silver siglos, a lower denomination coin for everyday commerce. The exchange rate between gold and silver was fixed by the state at 20 to 1. The Persian government had created, for the first time in recorded history, a managed bimetallic monetary system. History teaches us that every major empire eventually discovers the same truth. You cannot hold territory with soldiers alone. You hold it with a currency that people trust, a tax system that people fear, and an infrastructure that makes trade profitable. Darius figured this out before Caesar, before Augustus, before any European monarch would think to try it. Here is something modern economists understand deeply, but ancient historians often overlook. Infrastructure is monetary policy. When you build roads that enable trade to move faster, you are expanding the effective money supply. You are increasing the velocity of commerce. You are, in every functional sense, stimulating an economy. Darius built the Royal Road, stretching approximately 2,700 kilometers from Sardis on the Aegean coast of modern Turkey to Susa in modern Iran. The Royal Road was not just a military highway. It was the circulatory system of the Persian economy. Caravanserais, state-funded rest stations, were positioned every 25 to 30 kilometers along the route, providing shelter, food, and fresh animals for travelers and merchants. The Persian postal system that ran along this road, the Angarium, could relay a message from Sardis to Susa in approximately 7 days. An unaccompanied traveler would need 3 months to make the same journey. The Persians had created, in effect, a high-speed information and commerce network layered over a continent. And this mattered financially because information is the oldest form of financial advantage. Satraps, the regional governors of Persian provinces, could communicate market conditions, tax revenues, and supply needs to the central treasury at Persepolis in days, not months. The empire could respond to economic disruptions with a speed that its rivals could not match. This is how Persia out-administered its neighbors, not just by conquering them, but by building a financial nervous system that made their own territories more profitable than anything their predecessors had imagined. No discussion of Persian financial history is complete without examining the tax system Darius codified, and the contradictions it contained. Darius divided the empire into approximately 20 satrapies, administrative provinces, each with a fixed annual tribute obligation assessed in silver. This was radical. Previous empires collected tribute opportunistically, sending armies to extract whatever they could. Darius set fixed amounts in advance, negotiated against the assessed productive capacity of each region. Egypt paid 700 talents of silver annually. Babylonia paid 1,000 talents, the richest province in the empire. India contributed a staggering 360 talents of gold dust, the single largest individual contribution in the known ancient world at the time. Media, the heartland of the empire, contributed 450 talents of silver. The total annual tribute collected by the Persian treasury at its peak is estimated by ancient historians at roughly 14,560 euboic talents of silver. Converted to modern mass, that is approximately 360,000 kilograms of silver flowing into the Persian state treasury every year.